This is Jason Kane from SasquatchSighting.ca. How good is a Sasquatch's sense of smell? That was the question rolling through my mind as Thomas Steenburg and I drove through BC's Chilliwack Valley on our way to explore the site of one of my favorite Sasquatch sightings. In August 1986, a married couple from Kansas City were fishing for trout, standing on the banks of the upper Chilliwack River, when they saw a Sasquatch estimated to be about 8 feet tall remove a stringer of fish that was wrapped high around a tree in their campsite. After removing the stringer of trout, the Sasquatch fled north through some salmonberry bushes and then across Chilliwack River Road, which was a dirt road at the time, and disappeared. Being smart, they decided not to chase after the fish thief. For most people, that would have been the end of a fishing vacation. If it had been me, I would have ignored the turd in my pants, left my tent and kit, jumped in my truck, and fled at a high rate of speed for civilization. But these folks were from Kansas City. They were used to high crime and danger. They stayed 2 more days, long enough for Thomas to hear of their story in the nearby town of Chilliwack by word of mouth, and catch up to them as they were pulling out of the campground. Thomas Steenburg, revisiting the site of his 1986 investigation that kind of renewed his quest for Sasquatch.
More commonly known as the Chilliwack Riverside.
Chilliwack River. And this is the tree that the fish stringer was hanging on.
Correct.
And in the background is the talus slope that the creature fled up, and Thomas found his footprint. And in between this tree and that slope runs Chilliwack Lake Road.
Correct. In 1986, the main road was not paved.
Not paved.
Yeah, and we've added other campsites in here that were not here at that time.
And what about the actual investigation?
Well, to me, the older couple whose name I just cannot remember right offhand, it was an elderly couple from Kansas City who were vacationing throughout British Columbia here, and they were fishing at the time when this incident happened. It was the wife that saw it first. And they just saw the thing looking up, like from the waist up, they could see it taking the fish from the tree. Now there were 4 other campers down at that end of the parking lot. The sites in between were empty. And one man came running up. And I think that's the same fellow that I ran into earlier in town that actually told me about what happened out here, I think. And it was quite well known by word of mouth. I didn't see any big newspaper article on it or anything, and I was out here very soon after. And I caught the couple who actually had the sighting in the campsite just as they were pulling out. So they delayed their leaving for about a good 45 minutes to tell me the story.
And that's the lake, the Chilliwack River behind us.
That's the main Chilliwack River. And the little creek is just on the other side of the main road. Still a mystery what the name of that creek is. It was known as Cow Creek back then, but I do believe that is wrong.
But we'll never really know, probably.
Probably not.
After getting the husband and wife's story, Thomas Steenburg camped out for the next couple of days, looking for and gathering evidence. By following spoor, sign, and 110 footprint impressions, Thomas determined that the Sasquatch fled north from Riverside Campground towards Ford Mountain. It crossed Chilliwack River Road and re-entered the bush about 12 meters to the east of Power Pole 381. In both the US and Canada, most rural power poles have a number on them that are used for identification in case of problems. Cops also use the identifiers to accurately record the location of an accident or crime scene, because power poles tend not to move. The Sasquatch then continued traveling north along the west bank of Cow Creek for about 60 meters, and then it stopped. Thomas said that he could clearly see track sign that the Sasquatch paused and waited. It appeared to move back and forth in a small area. Did it stop to see if it was being pursued? Was it lying in wait to ambush human pursuers? Was it examining its catch of the day? Was it looking for more fish in Cow Creek? No matter what the reason, my impression is that there had to be some thinking going on, possibly even some contemplation. After the animal paused, it continued fleeing north, up a steep talus slope at the foot of Ford Mountain, a slope littered with sharp rocks and large boulders the size of Volkswagen Beetles. Thomas stuck around for 2 more days and was able to recover 1 of 2 prints that he cast. The measurements, 18 inches long by 8 inches wide. A huge footprint.
Regrets? What would
Yes.
you have done differently?
I would have taken a lot more photographs of the footprints. I would have casted a lot more of them, made sure I had enough plaster of Paris. And the best plaster of Paris casting I did, I would have let it dry before I tried to take it out and wouldn't have lost it. But I was kind of new at doing this. It wasn't the first set of tracks I ever saw, but it was really the first I really tried to cast.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I learned a few things.
And I would have.
What not to do.
After hanging out with Thomas for most of the afternoon, I found that all the simple questions of who, what, when, and some of the where questions had been answered. But for every question that Thomas answered, a multiple more popped into my head. Was the Sasquatch watching them for some time before he stole the fish? And if so, from where was he watching? Was he worried about the other campers less than 100 meters away? Did he smell the fish? Grizzly bears have an amazing sense of smell and will grab stringers of fish. In fact, it is a tactic up here in British Columbia to keep your fish stringer in the water to avoid throwing off smells and attracting grizzlies. But trout are not oily fish, and their smell rarely attracts bears. Where does a Sasquatch flee? Does it run for home like criminals do? Is the same creature still alive and in the area? Was it watching us the afternoon that Thomas and I were up there? All these questions and more were spinning through my head as Thomas and I pored over the old site, armed with all the tools Thomas didn't have in 1986. Accurate topographical maps, GPS, dental stone for casting, and handheld high-definition video cameras. Thomas never recovered the stringer that was stolen by the fish thief of Cow Creek. Is it at the top of the slope? I'm tempted to head up there with a metal detector to look for it someday. Chances are a galvanized fish stringer may have survived our wet weather, especially if it is tucked up underneath the tall spruce at the top of the slope. But I know finding that stringer would be like trying to find a Sasquatch in a forest. Although, I like to imagine that it would be sitting on a stump overlooking the broad Chilliwack Valley below, where a Sasquatch stopped to dine on a takeout meal of fresh trout.